Hey, what's up guys? I'm going to review 7 Mesh Wi-Fi 6E systems starting from a retail price of $300 going all the way up to a retail price of $1,600. So a huge discrepancy in price. I'm going to talk about their specs, speed test and single router, wired and wireless backhaul configurations, and range test. And in the end, I'm going to tell you guys which one is my favorite pick for a budget mesh Wi-Fi system and which one is my overall pick for best mesh Wi-Fi system regardless of price. Before we jump into each individual unit, I quickly want to explain a few concepts and explain the testing environment. Number one, what is a mesh Wi-Fi? Well, mesh Wi-Fi is when you have 2 or more units that work together to create a single network. They are designed to replace your existing router because they are, in this case, both routers. However, in the network, on the same network, only the main one hooked up to your modem is acting as the router. The secondary one, even though it's physically a router, acts as a node. So, the purpose of a mesh Wi-Fi is to expand your Wi-Fi coverage. So, because now you have 2 or more units instead of 1, which expands your Wi-Fi coverage. So if you come with your Wi-Fi device, you're closer to this one, I'll switch you here. If you're closer to this one, I'll switch you here. All of this is done automatically and it's the same Wi-Fi name, same network. Number 2, what is wired backhaul, otherwise known as Ethernet backhaul? So this is when you have your secondary node hooked up via Ethernet to your primary router. And there can be an unmanaged switch in between them, so as long as there's an Ethernet making its way from here all the way to here. The advantage of this is on your secondary node, you're going to get a fast and stable connection. This is how I have my place wired. Now, it's not always convenient to do this. Sometimes it's not even possible. So that brings me to point number 3, which is what is wireless backhaul. So wireless backhaul is if this guy's hooked up to your modem, that's basically your primary router here. This guy is 1 or 2 rooms away, about 40 feet away or so, something like that. Depends on the place. But this one, you just hook it up to power, and it wirelessly talks to this guy. So you still get that expanded Wi-Fi coverage. However, you will get typically, you will get sometimes slightly slower, sometimes really slower speeds on the secondary one. For testing devices, I use my iPhone 13 Pro Max, which is my Wi-Fi 6 device, and a combination of my Pixel 6 Pro and Galaxy S22 Ultra, since the results from these were very similar. As far as testing environment, I used a local speed test server, so I made my computer into the server, and I went from Wi-Fi device to router to computer, isolating the router to get the best possible speeds from this to really find out how fast it can go. Because if I do an internet speed test, I'm basically sharing the public speed test server with a lot of other companies and or people, and I'm also relying on my internet speed. So this way it's kind of uncapped to how fast this thing can actually go. We're going to start with the least expensive and move our way up to the most expensive. So we have the TP-Link Deco XE75. It retails for $299 for a 2-pack. Covers up to 5,500 square feet. It is a tri-band system. It has 3 auto-sensing gigabit ports, which means you can hook up any one of the 3 to your modem. It will automatically detect it. It has the power plug, speed rating of AXE5400, and it includes parental controls. Now, something to note with the XE75, I did actually retest the speed and range test with this thing because I had it early on, and the very similar XE5300 actually performed better than this, which surprised me that there was such a big difference between the two. So retesting this with some firmware updates and stuff yielded better results, more comparable to the XE5300. Looking at the results, single router configuration, Wi-Fi 6 did amazing. Wi-Fi 6E looks like it did even more amazing. However, it can actually go faster than gigabit speeds, but you'll notice that it's pretty much capped right around gigabit speeds, and that's actually because of the port itself. So, looking at the wireless backhaul speeds, considering the speed rating and price of this thing, it did phenomenal. And wired backhaul was just about the same as single router configuration, Now we get to range test. So range will vary based on location. So if you're in between floors, a lot of thick walls and other things to cause interference, this is all going to hurt your range. So it really will vary based on location. However, all of these were tested in the same place. At 20 feet away, we get some good speeds. 50 feet, we're still getting really good speeds. And it takes us all the way up to 300 feet. So overall, I would say this did very well. Moving on to the TP-Link Deco XE5300. Now, this is pretty much the same thing as the Deco XE75. It's really the Costco version of it. It comes in a 3-pack and it costs $349 retail. Now this, because it's a 3-pack, covers up to 7,200 square feet. It is a tri-band, 3 auto sensing, just like the other one, gigabit ports. It has a speed rating of ASUS and just like that, parental controls are included. Now, looking at the speeds, they're pretty much very similar to the XE75, which is what I would expect. And range test, this thing actually, I got this all the way up to 320 feet, which was just a tad more. Now we get to the TP-Link Deco XE75 Pro, which retails for $399 for a 2-pack. Covers 5,500 square feet. It's a tri-band system, 3 auto sensing ports. However, you'll notice that it has a 2.5 gigabit port and 2 gigabit ports. So that's really the main difference between this and the XE75. It also includes the basic parental controls. We can see that Wi-Fi 6 did very well for single router configuration, but Wi-Fi 6E is where it shines. And the reason is because Wi-Fi 6E can actually go faster than gigabit speeds, and this has the 2.5 gigabit, which allows it. Now, wireless backhaul did very well. Again, it can't go as fast. Wired backhaul, you might be wondering, okay, Wi-Fi 6 did well. Why did Wi-Fi 6E slow down? Well, the reason for this is that you only have one 2.5 gigabit port on each unit. So if one of them is in use, you can't, to go even a wired backhaul, if this guy's in use, you're going to go from gigabit to the 2.5, so you're going to be operating at the slower of the two. Now, range test still did very well, very similar to the other Decos essentially. Now we get to the eero Pro 6E, which retails for $499 for a 2-pack. Now the 2-pack covers up to 4,000 square feet. It is a tri-band system with 2 auto sensing ports. We have a fast 2.5 gigabit port. The USB-C is for the power supply, and we have a gigabit port, and it's a nice basic shape, looks very nice and sleek. It has a speed rating of ASUS ET8. It also has a smart home hub built in, both Zigbee and Thread. So some smart home devices require a smart home hub, and this can actually act as the hub. The one negative about the eero is that if you want parental controls, you do have to pay a subscription for it. Now, it's not expensive, but it would be nice if it was included. Now, looking at the speed test, we get some really good speeds for Wi-Fi 6 and very good speeds for Wi-Fi 6E. And again, this is because of that 2.5 gigabit port. But wireless backhaul for this thing was not great. I was honestly expecting a lot better, and it just did not perform well. Wired backhaul, on the other hand, did fairly well, and you could see that the Wi-Fi 6E is capped to gigabit speeds, and again, the reason for that is because it only has one fast 2.5 gigabit port. Now, range test, looking at it, 20 feet away, pretty good speeds. 50 feet away, there was a drop, but it's still, decently, normally usable. 100 feet away, still very usable, and it goes all the way up to 320 feet. Next, we have the ASUS ET8, which retails for $529 for a 2-pack. Now, this is the other Mesh Wi-Fi that I tested because I got it such a long time ago, and I didn't actually have the Galaxy S22 Ultra or the Pixel 6 Pro, so I said, you know what, let me just retest it just in case, and I actually got slightly better range out of it, but the numbers were pretty similar, generally speaking. This thing covers up to 5,500 square feet. It is a tri-band unit, and looking at the ports, there is something extra here that the other ones do not have. So we have our power, we have our power switch, so I don't have to unplug it to turn it off or on. We have 4 dedicated Ethernet port. So what does this mean? Well, when I'm hooking it up to my modem, I actually have to use the WAN port, the blue one. WAN stands for Wide Area Network. And if I'm hooking it up to anything in my local area network, my LAN, I would have to use one of these 3 gigabit ports. And the blue one does support up to 2.5 gigabits. Now, this is a USB 3.0 port. You can actually hook up your external hard drive to this, and it can be shared among your network. However, don't expect crazy fast speeds out of this thing. And if you're wondering, the other one is exactly the same. And this is what it looks like.
Single router configuration, Wi-Fi 6 did well. Wi-Fi 6E did amazing. Wireless backhaul also did pretty good. And wired backhaul is the same type of thing here, where the Wi-Fi 6 is essentially the same as the single router configuration, but Wi-Fi 6E is now being capped because it only has one fast port. Looking at the range results, 20 feet, it's going very strong. 50 feet, still very, very good speeds, but it quickly slows down, and it's actually the shortest range from all the mesh Wi-Fis in this test. Granted, 250 feet is nothing to sneeze at.
Next, we have the ASUS ET12 Pro, which retails for $899 for a 2-pack. Now, in my opinion, this is the coolest looking mesh Wi-Fi system because it doesn't even look like a mesh Wi-Fi or a router. It actually either looks like a small rig or it looks like a skyscraper. This thing covers up to 6,000 square feet. It is a tri-band, and taking a look at the sides and stuff, this part lights up when it's on. And there's a little ASUS sign up on the top as well. That looks pretty cool as well. But essentially, we have 4 dedicated Ethernet ports, very similar to the ET8. However, we have our WAN supports 2.5 gigabits, but we have an additional port that supports 2.5 gigabits. So we actually have 2 gigabit ports and 2 2.5 gigabit ports. Now, you might be wondering why that's important, and I'll cover that just in a sec, but the key word here is wired backhaul. Now, we have our WPS button, our reset, we have our on and off switch, and our power. We get very fast speeds for single router configuration, good speeds for wireless backhaul, and we get very good speeds for wired backhaul. Now, why is that? Well, that's because you actually now have 2 fast ports. Here's another place where this thing shines. Even though this goes very far, up to 350 feet, the speeds at every place were very fast. I was blown away how much range this thing actually had. Most of the other mesh Wi-Fis went fairly close to this in terms of range. However, their speeds were a lot slower than this thing. Then we get to the LINKSYS Atlas Max 6E, which has the same exact retail price as the ET12 Pro, retailing for $899 for a 2-pack. So this thing covers up to 6,000 square feet. It's a tri-band system, and it has 5 dedicated Ethernet ports. So looking at the ports, we have a very fast 5 gigabit, which these are dedicated. So if you're hooking this up, this is basically your WAN port that goes to your modem. And then you have 4 gigabit ports. You also have a USB-C, and if I remember correctly, you can actually hook up a hard drive to this as well and share it among your network. Again, don't expect fast speeds. And our power supply. And we also have some buttons on the bottom. We have an on and off switch, WPS, and a reset. Single router configuration did very well. Wireless backhaul was also pretty good, but wired backhaul, again, Wi-Fi 6E is being capped to gigabit, and for the very same reason, we only have 1 fast port. Now, as far as range tests, it did fairly well as long as you were within 100 feet. After that, it really slowed down quite a bit, especially considering the price of this thing. And finally, we get to the NETGEAR Orbi RBKE963, which retails for $1,599 for a 3-pack. So it covers up to 9,000 square feet. It is a quad band mesh system, and it has 5 dedicated Ethernet ports on the router and 4 dedicated on the satellite. So we have our internet port that goes here that supports internets of up to 10 gigabit. We have our 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, which can be used for an Ethernet backhaul, and we have 3 other gigabit ports. We have our power reset and sync button. Now, unlike the other mesh systems, this is the router, and these two, even though they look identical, are actually the satellites, the additional nodes. So that one has to be the router. Whereas this one, the satellite, they have the same exact ports. We have a 2.5 gigabit, we have 3 other gigabits, and we have our power port reset and sync button. So it looks exactly the same, but it is a satellite, not a router. So this has a crazy fast speed rating, just like the ET12 Pro of AXE 11000. Now, the one bad thing about this is if you want parental controls, I think it does come with a trial for now, but after that trial, you actually have to pay a subscription to have parental controls, which in my mind doesn't make too much sense because this is so expensive. I feel like they should include parental controls for free. In fact, I think they should include it for all the mesh Wi-Fis, not just this one. Now, looking at the speeds, we have amazing single router speeds, we have amazing wireless backhaul speeds, and we have amazing wired backhaul speeds. And the reason for that is because we have 2 fast ports. And looking at the range, it goes very far, up to 320 feet, one of the better ones compared to the rest of them. The TP-Links all use the Deco app, which is a very simple, clean, and easy to use app with a decent number of options. The eero app is also a very nice, clean, simple to use app. However, it is slightly limited on the options. Now, I think in most cases you should be fine. It's honestly fine for me as well. But if you're someone that really needs to tweak things, I probably would stay away because this is kind of limited. In fact, I would probably just say I would go the ASUS route because you get the most number of options with ASUS. They really let you tweak a lot of things. There's an ASUS router app, and you can also go to the browser if you type in the default gateway. You can go there, log in, ton of options. LINKSYS also has the same type of thing. You have an app, you can also go to the browser, and the app on this thing is very clean, very modern looking, and has a decent number of options. The Orbi is also the same, where you have a decent number of options on the app, and if you want more options, you go to the browser login, which I think is orbilogin.com. Before I pick a winner, real quick, all of these mesh systems are very good in their own situation, so it really depends on your situation, what you expect to do, how fast your internet is. Are you going to do wired versus wireless backhaul? How big is your home? Do you care about the speed of the secondary node? So all of this stuff can make a difference. So I'm going to generalize and say my best budget pick is going to be the Deco XE75. Very easy choice. It costs a lot less. It performs very well considering the price. In fact, it actually performed better than what I was expecting. Now, in terms of what's the best, well, this one was a lot tougher. So, if I had to keep price in mind, I would easily pick the ASUS ET12 Pro. Well, I'm not going to say easily, but I would pick the ASUS ET12 Pro because number one, you have 2 fast 2.5 gigabit ports. So you can actually, if you have internet speeds, let's just say at 2 or 2.5 gigs, you can actually have that throughout your home because now you have 2 fast ports. And number 2, it looks super cool. Number 3, you have an insane amount of options with ASUS. Number 4, you get an insane amount of range with very good speeds, even far away. Now, if I had to take price out of the equation, then the Orbi starts to come in. And the reason for that is because, now it doesn't get quite as good range as the ET12. I mean, very close, but number-wise, speed-wise, at those distances, the ET12 was better. But aside from that, still getting very, very good range, you have this additional band. So if you have a lot of devices, over 150 devices, I would probably start leaning towards the quad band because you have this additional band. It has better wireless backhaul performance. In fact, the wireless backhaul performance on this is insane. It's almost as good as wired backhaul. I mean, not quite, but very, very, very good. And you still get a whole bunch of options, and it can actually go faster than 2.5 gigabit. On the main router, you can actually go up to 10 gigabit internet access. So when all of those things come into play, maybe the Orbi is the best. And really it's probably because the main reason is because it's really a quad band system. So if I had to take price out of the equation, I probably would pick the Orbi as the winner. But if I had to pick price in the equation, I would pick the ET12. So much harder decision. Let me know what you guys think in the comment sections below. And as always, smash that subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.